Buried deep in the Rocky Mountains is a fortress so secure, so feared, that it has been called the Alcatraz of the Rockies. ADX. Florence isn't just a prison. It's a human warehouse for America's most dangerous criminals. Terrorists, cartel bosses, gang leaders, and mass killers all end up here. But what makes this Supermax prison so dangerous? And why has it been described as a clean version of hell? Today, we step inside ADX Florence. The birth of a Supermax. The story of ADX Florence begins not in Colorado, but in Illinois, inside a prison called USP Marion. Back in the early 1980s, Marion was one of the most secure federal penitentiaries in the United States. But in 1983, everything changed. Two correctional officers, Merle Klutz and Robert Hoffman, were murdered by inmates linked to prison gangs. Both killings happened within hours of each other, shaking the federal prison system to its core. The murders highlighted a terrifying reality. Even in maximum security prisons, some inmates were too violent, too organized, and too dangerous to control. In the aftermath, Marion went into permanent lockdown. Prisoners were confined to their cells for 23 hours a day. This experiment in long-term isolation became the model for a new kind of prison, one built not to rehabilitate, but to contain the uncontrollable. By the early 1990s, federal officials concluded they needed a new facility, one designed from the ground up as a Supermax. The idea was simple: create an environment where inmates had almost no opportunity to harm staff, other prisoners, or the outside world. In 1994, construction was completed on the United States Penitentiary Administrative Maximum Facility, better known as ADX Florence. Located just outside Florence, Colorado, the prison was placed in a remote desert area surrounded by mountains. Its design was deliberate, isolated, intimidating, and nearly impossible to escape. With a capacity of about 490 inmates, ADX Florence was meant to house the worst of the worst. The layout of ADX reflects this philosophy. Cells are small, just 7 by 12 feet, with solid concrete walls, steel doors, and a narrow 4-inch wide window designed so inmates can see only the sky, never the surrounding mountains or other prisoners. Meals are delivered through slots in the doors. Inmates spend 23 hours a day inside these concrete boxes, with 1 hour of exercise in small enclosed yards known as dog runs. Even then, prisoners are alone. Former warden Robert Hood once described ADX as a clean version of hell. Everything about its design minimizes human interaction. Inmates rarely see other people face to face. Contact with staff is kept to a minimum. Even lawyers and family visits happen behind thick glass. The mission of ADX is clear: total control. Officials believe this level of isolation prevents inmates from continuing to run criminal organizations, plotting escapes, or attacking staff. But for critics, it raises serious questions about human rights. Prolonged solitary confinement is known to cause severe psychological damage: depression, paranoia, hallucinations, and in some cases, suicide. Still, from the government's perspective, ADX is a necessity. Over the years, it has housed some of the most notorious criminals in U.S. history. Terrorists like Ramzi Youssef, the 1993 World Trade Center bomber, and Zacarias Moussaoui, linked to 9/11. Cartel leaders like Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, the Mexican drug lord who escaped prisons in his home country before being locked away at ADX. Gang leaders and violent criminals like Thomas Silverstein, who spent decades in isolation after killing correctional officers. Domestic terrorists like Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. Each inmate sent to ADX reinforces its reputation as the end of the line, a place where America sends the men it cannot control anywhere else. But the real question is, what is daily life like inside this fortress? And how does a prison built for maximum security become, in its own way, one of the most dangerous places on earth, not because of escapes or riots, but because of what it does to the human mind? That's where our journey inside ADX Florence truly begins. Daily life in ADX. The routine of isolation. Step inside ADX Florence, and you enter a world designed around isolation and control. Everything, from the architecture to the daily schedule, is engineered to break connections, limit movement, and ensure complete separation between inmates and staff. For most prisoners, the day begins the same way. Inside a 7 by 12-foot concrete cell, the walls are solid, painted a dull white or grey, and the furniture is made of poured concrete. A bed, a small desk, and a stool moulded into the wall. There's a stainless steel sink and toilet unit bolted down to prevent tampering. The cell's only window is a narrow slit, just 4 inches wide and 3 feet long, angled so inmates can see nothing of the world outside except the sky. No mountains, no horizon, just a strip of blue or grey. Inmates spend 23 hours a day in this box. Meals arrive through a slot in the heavy steel door. Guards rarely speak more than a few words while passing trays. Breakfast comes early, often cold cereal, milk, and sometimes a piece of fruit. Lunch and dinner are hot meals, but simple. Pasta, rice, beans, or meatloaf. Everything is portion-controlled and monitored. Communication with the outside world is minimal. Phone calls are rare and tightly monitored. Visits, if allowed, happen behind thick glass barriers, with conversations carried out over phones. Family members describe the experience as like visiting a ghost. Each day, inmates are allowed 1 hour of recreation. But recreation at ADX doesn't mean a yard with other prisoners. Instead, it means a concrete enclosure about the size of a dog kennel, sometimes with a chin-up bar or exercise mat. The yard is surrounded by 20-foot walls with steel mesh overhead. From inside, prisoners can see only a patch of sky. Many describe this hour as their only reminder that the outside world still exists. Every movement outside the cell requires full restraint. Inmates are handcuffed, shackled, and escorted by multiple guards. Even showers, allowed 2 to 3 times a week, happen in small stalls under strict surveillance. For many, the brief walk from their cell to the shower is the longest journey of their week. Daily life follows a strict routine. 5 o'clock a.m. Wake up to breakfast delivered through the slot. a.m. 1100 a.m. Locked in the cell, reading, writing letters, pacing, or doing push-ups. Many inmates create exercise routines to pass time. Noon, lunch through the slot. 1 o'clock p.m. 4 o'clock p.m. Recreation hour, alone in the enclosure, depending on schedule. Evening, dinner through the slot, followed by more hours of silence in the cell. Lights out. At 11 o'clock p.m., though inmates say sleep is often difficult in the constant fluorescent glow. The silence of ADX is overwhelming. Some describe it as crushing, a place where the only sounds are the clank of doors, the echo of boots, and the buzz of fluorescent lights. For men used to chaos in other prisons, this silence becomes unbearable. Psychologists warn of the effects of long-term solitary confinement, and ADX is the most extreme example in the country. Inmates report hallucinations, paranoia, severe anxiety, and suicidal thoughts. A 2012 lawsuit against the Bureau of Prisons described conditions at ADX as driving men insane. Some have mutilated themselves or attempted suicide after years in isolation. Yet despite these warnings, officials argue ADX is necessary. The prison houses men like Ramzi Youssef, the 1993 World Trade Center bomber, and Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, the Boston Marathon bomber. It held cartel kingpin El Chapo Guzman, whose escapes in Mexico made him a global legend. It has housed gang leaders who ordered murders from behind bars and domestic terrorists like Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. For these men, officials say, isolation is the only way to stop them from harming others or running criminal networks from inside. ADX wasn't built for ordinary criminals. It was built for the masterminds, the organizers, the ones who could turn a prison yard into a battlefield. Still, the question lingers. Does isolating men 23 hours a day make the world safer? Or does it create something even darker? A prison where the punishment isn't just confinement, but the destruction of the human mind. ADX. Florence stands as America's fortress of isolation, a place built to control the uncontrollable. For its defenders, it's the last line of defense against the world's most dangerous men. For its critics, it is a clean version of hell, where punishment goes beyond justice and becomes psychological destruction. Inside those concrete cells, surrounded by silence, the line between safety and cruelty blurs. And so the question remains, is ADX Florence America's most dangerous prison because of the men it holds, or because of what it does to them